Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are taking on, I think, one of the most stressful areas of medical practice.
Definitely. Navigating financial incentives, all the commercial pressures, and that constant threat of a conflict of interest.
Exactly. We're diving into the GMC's guidance on financial and commercial arrangements. This is, well, it's essential stuff for any doctor, but especially if you're facing those ethical pressure points in the situational judgment test, the SJT.
Yeah, and this deep dive is really about boiling that guidance down into a clear, high-yield framework for making decisions. This isn't just about, ticking bureaucratic boxes.
Right.
This guidance is the bedrock. It's what ensures your conduct justifies both the patient's trust in you and, crucially, the public's trust in the entire profession. Getting this wrong can put a doctor's registration at serious risk.
So let's just jump straight into that tension. Imagine this classic scenario, what you might see in an exam. You successfully managed a really complex long-term case. The patient is incredibly grateful. On their last appointment, they insist on giving you an unsolicited thank you gift. Let's make it substantial. Say, a bottle of vintage wine worth about 150 pounds. You feel genuinely touched. Do you accept it? And what is the absolute first thing that has to go through your head?
And that's it. That's the tension right there, the human element, that lovely gesture versus your professional duty. It's exactly what they test. And the answer, drawn from those GMC principles, has to default to safety and perception.
So what's the core truth here, the one-sentence takeaway?
It's this. You must formally declare any interest and never allow a financial or commercial interest to affect or critically be seen to affect patient care decisions.
That phrase, seen to affect, that's what trips people up, isn't it? It's not just about your intent. Good intentions aren't enough.
Not at all. It's about protecting the integrity of the profession in the public eye. And connecting this to the bigger picture, honesty in your financial dealings is completely non-negotiable. It's a mandatory duty.
And the guidance says,
The guidance explicitly states that a serious failure to comply, especially if it risks patient safety or public trust, is absolutely grounds for fitness to practice proceedings.
and for anyone revising for exams like the MSRA, this entire area is a huge high-scoring cluster. They're constantly testing your ability to balance those commercial pressures.
Like the QOF target payments?
Exactly. Balancing those against the safety and the specific needs of your individual patient. That clash is what they're looking for.
They're testing your moral default setting. I mean, do you instinctively prioritize the patient or the financial incentive?
Let's talk about the foundation of all these rules then. Prioritizing trust and transparency. What is the GMC's absolute non-negotiable expectation?
It's actually quite simple on paper. You must be honest in every single financial and commercial dealing. Your personal interest cannot influence the way you treat, refer, or prescribe, period.
And that trust test you mentioned.
It's ongoing. Trust is so fragile, and it can be shattered if there is even a suggestion that your judgment is influenced by your financial interests. And it's not just about money either. Conflicts can be about personal beliefs, relationships, other non-financial things.
So here's where it gets really practical. What if the conflict isn't obvious? How should a doctor act to stay safe?
This is what we call the safest doctor rule. If you are in any doubt whatsoever, even a tiny bit, about whether a conflict of interest exists,
You act as if there is one.
you act as if there is one, exactly,
Yeah.
and that requires you to be hypervigilant. If you face a conflict, you have to be open, declare your interest formally, and be prepared to step away from the decision-making process entirely.
Okay, let me just challenge that for a second. What if I'm in a really specialized, maybe a rural practice, and I am the only person who can offer a specific, necessary private service, and I have a financial stake in it? How can I realistically exclude myself?
That's a great question, and it's about mitigation. Exclusion is mandatory if you're involved in high-level decisions, commissioning services for a health board.
Right.
But in that clinical setting you described, exclusion might not be possible. So the key shifts entirely to transparency and documentation. You must tell the patient explicitly about your financial interest before treatment.
And make sure they understand they have choices.
Yes, even if those choices involve travel or inconvenience. And then you thoroughly document that entire conversation, that disclosure, in the medical record.
So transparency and documentation become the substitute for exclusion when it's just not possible. That's a critical distinction.
It is. And on that transparency note, if you charge fees for any service, you have to tell the patient up front, ideally before they even consent.
And you have to mention if part of the fee goes to someone else.
Yes. And Vitally, you must never, ever exploit a patient's vulnerability or their lack of medical knowledge to set your fees. Their trust is not a commodity.
Okay, let's move from the principle to action. What's the practical checklist for the listener? The first, next, last framework for a potential conflict.
I'd break it down into 4 interlocking steps. Step 1 is identify and avoid. Use your professional judgment. If you see a potential conflict, your default is always to avoid it if you can.
And if you can't.
Then step 2, formal declaration. If it's unavoidable, you have to declare it formally and early. That means following your employer's policy, putting it on record, not just a casual chat with a colleague.
Okay, so you've declared it. What's step 3?
Step 3 is mitigation and safeguarding. Get advice. But the most critical part of mitigation is ensuring that interest does not, under any circumstances, influence your clinical decisions. Patient care must remain paramount.
And the final step.
Step 4, document disclosure. So if you're referring a patient to an organization where you have a financial interest, you must specifically tell the patient about that and then record that disclosure in their notes. That closes the loop.
To help lock that in, maybe we can use a memory hook. Imagine a huge, bright sign in your mind's eye that spells out DECLARE.
Oh, I like that. That could work.
Let's try it. D is for?
Declare formally and early.
E is for exclude yourself, especially from those high-level commissioning decisions.
Right. C, care comes first. Your decisions must not be affected.
L is for large gifts. You have to consider the damage to trust and refuse anything that looks like an abuse of that trust.
A is for autonomy respected. No pressuring patients for your targets.
Good one. R is for record. Get all those disclosures down in the notes.
And finally, E is explain fees. Upfront and with total transparency.
I think that covers the big pitfall.
It does. So now that we have the framework, we should look at the specific scenario patterns the GMC uses to test these rules. Knowing these will really help your score.
What's the first common exam pattern we see?
Pattern 1, unsolicited gifts and bequests. This is all about testing your grasp of that abuse of trust principle. You can accept minor tokens, a box of chocolates. But when the gift becomes substantial, like that 150-pound bottle of wine, you have to pause. The best action is to consider the potential damage to public trust. Could accepting it be seen as an abuse of your position?
And if the answer is yes,
You should politely but firmly refuse it. Explain that professional rules prevent you from accepting, and you can absolutely never encourage patients to give or bequeath you money. That's a total prohibition.
okay, that makes sense. It's less about the money, more about the power dynamic. What's the second pattern?
The internal pressure. So pattern 2, financial incentives and target payments.
Right, the QOF framework in general practice.
Exactly. What's being tested is whether you pressure a patient just to hit a target for the practice's benefit. You can, of course, recommend clinically relevant schemes, but you must not push them to comply because of the financial outcome for you. The clinical reason has to be number 1.
And the third pattern is that constant, real-world ethical squeeze. Cost-effective prescribing. Balancing NHS resources against individual patient safety.
This is a huge safety trap in exams. You have a duty to use resources wisely, but your primary duty is always, always the safety and needs of the individual patient in front of you.
So if you're switching a medicine to a cheaper generic,
You have to tell them before you make the change. You provide support. You weigh the saving against the clinical risks, like non-adherence if the patient gets confused. Safety always wins against savings.
and the final pattern, inducements from industry or colleagues.
The rule here is basically black and white. You must not ask for or accept any inducement, gift, or hospitality that could reasonably be thought to affect or be seen to affect your clinical decisions.
Even a sponsored educational event.
Well, if it's genuinely educational with no strings attached, that's one thing. But if it's tied to endorsing a product or just seems designed to sway you, it has to be refused.
Okay, let's crystallize this by looking at the trap answers. The options that sound reasonable but score terribly.
The traps almost always involve a lack of transparency, a delay, or just blatant self-interest.
So, first trap.
Ignoring the conflict or dealing with it privately. The GMC demands formal declaration. Ignoring it is an immediate failure of your duty.
What was the second trap?
Influencing patient choice to benefit yourself or your family. That is explicitly prohibited.
And the third?
Accepting fees for non-healthcare referrals. So taking a fee to refer a patient to a solicitor. The GMC generally forbids this because you don't have the expertise to vet that service. The motive is purely financial.
Fourth trap.
Encouraging bequests. We've said it, but it's a huge one. You must not encourage vulnerable patients to leave you money. It's a non-starter.
And the last one.
Delaying action. Declaring a conflict early is key. Waiting until after the decision is made or until the end of the year to declare a gift. That's a classic SJT trap. It just signals poor professional judgment.
Okay, rapid fire round. Let's really apply this. If X happens, you do Y.
Ready. If your employer has a financial interest in a pharmacy you frequently prescribe through.
You must declare that conflict and ensure that interest has absolutely zero effect on your prescribing, and the patient needs to know as well.
Okay. If you are part of a commissioning group deciding on a contract, and your spouse works for one of the bidding companies,
You must formally declare that conflict and then exclude yourself completely from that specific decision-making process. The perception of bias is just too high to manage.
good. If a long-standing, very unwell patient proposes a surprisingly large financial gift,
You have to refuse it. The patient is vulnerable. Accepting it would absolutely be seen as an abuse of trust and would damage public confidence. Final one. If you change a patient's drug, primarily because your practice gets a bonus for prescribing a cheaper alternative,
you must tell the patient before the change, make sure the switch is clinically safe for them, and provide all the necessary support. The patient's safety and their understanding come first, way before any bonus.
this has been incredibly clarifying. Let's finish with the 3 non-negotiable takeaways for practice and the exam room.
Okay. Key takeaway 1. Transparency is paramount. If a conflict arises, formal declaration is mandatory, and exclusion from high-level decisions is often the safest possible path.
Key takeaway 2. Patient vulnerability must never, ever be exploited. This covers everything from fees and bequests to pressure for target-driven schemes.
And key takeaway 3. Perception defines reality in this area. You have to avoid any gift, any inducement, any arrangement that could possibly be seen to affect your professional judgment or compromise public trust.
We've really unpacked the rules of engagement here. I think the thing to remember is that the true measure of ethical conduct isn't just about avoiding personal gain.
No, it's not.
It's about ensuring every single decision you make is justifiable, not just to the patient, but to the public. If you always default to the option that best protects the public's trust, you are almost always on the safest ground. That's the rule to live by.